Hello again, folks. Welcome to another daily Bible reading guide as we journey through the New Testament. Today we're in the chapter 4 of the book of James, penultimate chapter. And again, James is majoring on how we think and how we act, where Paul tends to focus on kind of that deep theological stuff that enriches our souls. James focuses in on the practicalities that impact our lifestyles. And today's chapter is really all about the attitudes we carry, the motives that sit behind what we say and what we do. So the fighting, arguing, quarreling, that's where he starts. It's a part of life, isn't it? We're often in disagreement with others. And where it's okay to disagree on things, it's not okay to start a fight about it. And James says generally these fights and arguments start because of our hearts, because of the sinful desires we have on the inside. So, for example, perhaps we crave something that we don't have. Perhaps we're jealous or envious of someone. Perhaps we're feeling hard done by. And so instead of kind of bringing it to the Lord and seeking His guidance and even asking Him for the very thing that we crave, we let our desires lead us and drive us. We get hot-headed. We throw childlike tantrums and often in the direction of others. And James even acknowledges the very reason we don't ask God for stuff is probably because we know that we're asking with the wrong motive. See, we cannot trick our God. We can't say, "Oh Lord, please just let me have loads and loads of money and I'll, give it away to charity and really bless people with it and be very generous," when in actual fact, we're secretly planning to redo the kitchen, tour the bathrooms, buy a new sports car and go on a round the world trip. You see, the motives and the desires in our hearts, they matter to the Lord. And James challenges us to see that Christians ought to live differently. People of genuine faith ought to have good works. We saw that in chapter 2. Good works and deeds evident in their lives. We ought to have pure motives underneath our actions. If not, then James says here in this chapter, we are friends with the world. It's a fascinating phrase that he uses. And really what he's getting at here is someone, I suppose, who is guided and shaped and even driven by the values that the world lifts up and clings to. Remember, Scripture continually reminds us that the world around us is a broken place, it's fallen, it's a sinful place, a place where the prince of this world, that is the devil, has footholds all over. And what the world does with the gifts, the good gifts as well, the good gifts that God gives, is take them and corrupt them and use them for our own pleasure rather than for God's glory. So one chief example that's constantly talked about, especially in the New Testament, is money. We hoard it, we treasure it, we store it up, we spend lavishly on ourselves, all the while other people around us are dying in need. So James is challenging these kind of attitudes and these kind of motives that sit in our hearts. He says in verse 7, "Submit yourself to God." That is, come under the authority and the teaching and the influence of the Father, not of the world. We're not to live by the standards of society. We're to live by God's standards as given to us in the Scriptures. Don't give in to the temptations that the devil displays around you in culture. Rather, resist the devil. And in response, we're told he will flee from us. That's amazing. We don't even have to kind of get into a ruck and fight off the devil. We just simply resist him and he flees and runs from us. James uses a word repeatedly here that kind of sums up what our attitude should be, and the word is humble or humility. That is to say, we're to recognize the lowly position that we are in. We're to recognize that we are created beings who are fallen and sinful. We're susceptible to temptation. We're limited in our resistance, and so we must not be proud. We must ask the Lord for help. We must cling to Him and His power. We must allow the Spirit to sanctify and guide. And James even says we shouldn't slander or look down upon or judge our neighbours either. We're all sinners at the end of the day. We all fall short of God's standard and His glory. So we should spur each other on to better things rather than pulling each other down. James finishes the chapter then by challenging the assumptions we make about things that we take for granted, even about life itself. We make plans that are way beyond the scope of certainty in our lives. I mean, take a look at what is going on around us this year. Who would have predicted this? And look at the impact it's having on people around the world. Whether you're rich or poor, whether you're living on one side of the planet in Australia or on the other in America, whether you're a Christian or not a Christian, the virus sees no distinction. And the point is, tomorrow is uncertain. We never know what's around the corner. So all the money, all the plans, all the fame, the wealth, the power that we might have, even the health that we have, none of it is certain. The only thing that's certain is God, and we are in His hands. So we ought to trust in Him. If something happens in our lives, it's because He is determined that it should be so. It is in His will where we live, when we live, who we live with. It's in His will what business we do, what money we earn, and what possessions we have. And so we should not boast or brag about anything as if it's ours and no one or no thing can take it from us. Our job is to trust in the Lord, to follow His plans for our lives, and to look to Him for strength and guidance along the way. Wow, what a chapter. More incredibly challenging stuff from this incredible book, James. Until tomorrow for one last chapter in the book, God bless.